Hello, my name is Cheryl Wilson. I'm an abstract artist, and those that are returning to my channel, again, thank you so much. I'm really enjoying getting to know some of you and seeing some of the comments and us talking back and forth with each other. And those that are new to my channel, I am an abstract artist, and I do videos on, I paint abstracts, I do videos on talking about the abstracts, kind of like a studio chat, and that's what this is today. I do a series in what's working in my abstracts and what's not working, and that's been a big thing for me because I still look at my abstracts and I'll paint one and it's like I'm not quite sure what's wrong with it. And so I've developed, and I've showed this before, it's a form. I have a link in my PayHip. I have a link to several tools that are great for artists that goes through a list of things that I use in my abstracts when I'm struggling in the end. And it kind of goes along with, and I've talked about this before, how do you know when your art is done? And I talk about the 3 questions to ask, and that, does my eye move around in the piece? Is there some element of wow in my painting? And what does my painting look like from a distance? And a lot of times I'll take my painting, and like I'm looking at this one behind me that I did on a YouTube video in the past, and if you look at it in a mirror or you know, from the flip side, sometimes you see things differently and it really helps you. So I have a painting over here on my flat table, and I'm going to do a future video on some new things I got in my studio that really have helped me organize and just upgrade my studio a little bit. But I'm going to switch you over to that camera, and we're going to talk about the elements in abstract art. I'm going to go through this sheet and talk about the painting, and we're going to just go through it, and just from my opinion, but I'm the artist, so it's my art, my opinion, and I'm going to be the one changing it. So that's what you're going to do to your art. It's going to be your art, your opinion, and you're the one that's going to go in and change the things. So you have to kind of get used to what it is you're going to be looking for in your art and some of the things you can do. Sometimes I have to go through this list a couple times before I really figure out what it is I need to do in my painting. Sometimes it comes real fast. So if you go through the first time and you decide what you're going to make your changes on, and then I suggest going through the whole thing, writing down some of your changes.
Unknown caller.
Hello? Solicitors. Okay, I'm going to cut that out, I think. Anyway, I'm going to switch you over to the other camera, and we're going to have some fun. All right. All right, I'm over here, and I am looking at this piece of art, and I haven't labeled this yet. It was a piece that I painted over from years ago, and I've kept this for myself. I've just enjoyed this piece myself, and have just have kept it. But I haven't done an analysis on it to see some of the things that, do I want to make changes? Do I want to keep it? So that's what we're going to do today, and I'm going to do this with you. And I go through 5 areas. Design, composition, shape, that's one whole chunk. Value, color, line, and texture. Now, while all of them are equally important in my mind, you'll see why each of the sections, but I think the when you look at the design elements in a piece of art, that is like key, because if you have your color right but you don't have your design right, oh my goodness, you can really be off. So let's talk about design, composition, and shape. And the first question I say, is it interesting? And in my opinion, yes. And I'll tell you as we go through this what some of the things that I did in the painting, and you probably can spot them right off that I did that made it more interesting. Are there differences that keep you interested? That's a huge one for me. By adding the different things in here, the texture. Some of this is textured. There's some spray stencil in here. There's some of my traditional marks that I have. There's some thin line working. There's some big marks. So yes, there are differences in the painting, enough of a difference in what I've added on here that it's all not the same, the shapes aren't the same size. There's enough of a color difference that it keeps my eye interested in flowing through the painting. Does it connect in style, or are they fighting with each other? Sometimes if I don't add like this big shape here, and I didn't add that shape, then a lot of the painting in itself would be fighting with each other, because there's nothing large enough or nothing different enough, like a big shape, some line work, that helps differentiate the painting. And so when you're in the middle of the painting and it's at the ugly stage, some of the things that I'm going to be talking about are some of the things you can do that take it to the next level, and then you're like, oh, okay, I get it, my painting's done. Are there things to allow the eye to flow around the canvas? And some of the things that help with this is, if you see the color pink, it just floats around the canvas. There's enough, it doesn't overwhelm the painting, but there's enough of the different spots of pink that makes your eye go, and you look in every part of the canvas. This is the bullseye, so there's no really pink in there. It is very light. Sometimes if you have a big object right here, it's harder to have your eye look around the painting. Same thing with some of the yellow. It's not as prominent, but there's enough yellow spots that makes your eye look around. Even the line work comes down, takes you this way, throws you up here, takes you up here, and then, of course, that's kind of like an odd area. But think about some of the things that you do that's going to help you make the eye, and that just takes practice to do things that make the eye float around. Value. Now, when you look at this one, this almost looks like a water scene, like under the garden, it's almost like the top of a pond, and underneath is some water. And so what does that, and this is one of my next question, do I have lights and darks in my painting? And if I didn't add some of these dark marks and everything was the same value in here, then there's nothing exciting. Our brain wants differences. Our brain wants that excitement of the contrast. So when you talk about lights and darks, you have very light through here, but then you have dark. Many times when I'm working on a painting and I don't feel like I have the contrast, and in this one I don't have black, but almost all of them I have a little bit here, I will add some black into the painting, and all of a sudden the contrast starts to make sense to me, and it starts to work for me. Is my eye drawn to shapes where light versus dark is strongly contrasted? An example's right here. This dark space is right next to a light space. This light line here is next to some dark. This white is next to some dark. And if you think about making a mark and you make a dark mark, you may even want to go in and add a light somewhere. So there's the contrast back and forth. And that's what I think made this painting pop for me, was when I added the white lines in, because it just helped bring in some lightness on top of the whole painting itself. Do I have a darkest color and a lightest color? And that's where this blue comes in. This blue is very vibrant and popping. And then you've got the lightest color. Not only do you have the white, but you've got a lot of these other colors are just muted in here. And they kind of are concentrated in here. But there's a lot of muted, and there's ways and techniques to get that muted color. And I've shared that in some of my other videos, and I can keep sharing that to get them when they're on your canvas, to get it flat so it's your underpainting, and then your top painting may have some texture or it may have such a contrasting color it pops up. Do I have quiet areas to help with my painting, and do I have a main focus? When I first look at this painting, my eye goes right here and then it goes here. So I do have a lot of quiet area because I have a lot of this, even though there's a lot going on. The quiet area doesn't mean it's boring, there's nothing going on. It just means it's not a very, this is more of a louder area, an area that gets more focus. It helps push this area back, and that contrast is really what the eye really likes to look at. So color. Now color is one of the tools that artists use to create effective and meaningful abstract artwork. Some abstract artists or some artists use, they may use a monochromatic color all the time in their paintings. There's some that just do black and white or shades of that. So color is very important, and it can be a very unique thing to you. But in this, is there a light and dark contrast throughout? And that's kind of the same question I asked before. But in realms of using color, have I been able to do that? And yes, here's a white here, but I've done a technique to push it to the back, and this white is very vocal and on the top because it's not pushed back like this. So there is that aspect in there. Do I have complementary colors? And that's in a painting that's so loud as this is, doing complementary colors is a little bit harder because of a lot going on. But then again, it's a little bit easier. Like you see the yellow and the greens and just the contrast. The contrast of green is red, but you can have a variation of like some purples and things. So look for contrasting colors that help you. Do I use a limited palette, or do I use colors? So that is one. If you're doing a limited palette, some of the same things can come into play here. But this one is definitely not a limited palette. This was like whatever was left on my palette to get started, and then I went in and had fun and added all the things at the top. Line. Now line is very important because you can have thick lines and thin lines and curvy lines and straight lines. So are there contrasting or interesting lines in my painting? And this is one of the most interesting one. I love this line right here. And then you've got lines here and even thick lines and a line here. And the yellow kind of is like a line. And then you've got lines here. So even down in the bottom or the underpainting, you've got lines. There's just a lot to look at in the underpainting if you were to be able to go. And I'll try to do a video of, you know, closer up so you can see all the different layers that this painting has. Do you have straight versus curved, neat versus messy, thin versus thick? Those are the things to look at, the contrast back and forth. That's what the eye likes. Do I have hard edges and soft edges? A lot of the underpainting are the soft edges. These lines are hard edges. There's a very hard edge there. There's a very hard edge there. And then this is a soft edge. It's kind of, you know, it starts out and then it's very blurred in there. So that helps with the contrast. There's a very hard edge there, and it's next to a lot of underpainting that the lines are very soft edges. And soft edges means they're very blurred. Hard edges is definitely, you know, you can definitely, it's a hard edge used with the paint. Do some of my lines go off the canvas? And like for instance, this line goes off the canvas. This line here, it looks like it goes off the canvas. Some of my purple here, painted, it just goes off the canvas. This line goes up here and off the canvas. The eye loves that for some reason. So when you're painting, think about that. Don't stop at the edge. Just keep it going sometimes. If you don't like it, you can always paint over a spot. So don't worry about that. So texture. So texture can be physical, or it can be with mediums, or it's just an illusion. So this is very flat in here, but it looks like there's a lot of texture because I've added layer and layer, but it's flattened out, but there's a lot of texture. Then you've got, like this has it's like a ridge on here. This is like when I put the paint down, there's texture there. And then there's a lot of other things you can do to add texture. This looks like texture. It's very flat, so it's a visual texture because of the tool that I used. Did I add texture with paint or visually? So that's basically telling you there's different ways to add texture. This is mainly visual texture as opposed to adding a lot of medium in here, but there's definitely texture. And then as I go through and I make my little notes to the side here, I have a what will I change down here, and then I just start on my painting as I noted something. Like say for instance my line went there, and I could note, make the white line up in the right hand quadrant, make it go off the canvas. So those are the kinds of things that you're going to add. Maybe this pink wasn't here, and you're going to say, okay, add a thicker, glob of pink paint up in the left side. So you're going to be marking down some of the things that you're noticing. Go back to the painting, change those things, let it sit for a while, and then go back and just redo the questions again. Go through them again and say, what am I going to look at that's going to help me make a difference? But being able to look at your paintings, being able to know what you can do to make them interesting, what elements in your abstracts that you can incorporate is huge. And of course, I've talked about the things I love list. There's going to be a lot of things when you don't know what to do that you're going to grab that list and look at it and say, okay, I like doing the infinity symbol. You may add infinity symbol in your art. I love white lines. Add white lines. I love the differentiation between the thick line and thin lines. Do that. I love adding a blob of paint with a palette knife. Do that. Those are the things that are going to help you when you go through your list and you know that you have to change something. You can look at the things I love. One of the things that I've done a lot more lately, and I may do a whole video on it, is to get this flat look is to put your paint down and then you put like some deli paper over it or some brown paper, and you just smush it down, pull it up, and it just kind of flattens down the paint on your canvas, so it's not all the top layer. You can always go back when you're adding your final touches, and in fact that's what you should do, because these top layers need to be the ones that pop. But you've got a good underpainting where not everything's the same. So I hope that's been helpful. I'm going to come back over to the other camera. Let me do a switch here. There I am. So I hope that's been helpful to you. And I'm going to get my camera and go over there and do a more of a close-up, different sections, so maybe you can see the underpainting. So I hope it's been helpful. If there's anything in there that's been helpful, do a like for me so I know that you've resonated with something. And let me know if there's some of the things that you're going to incorporate into your art and your paintings, and just, let me know how you're doing, how your journey's coming along, because I'd love to hear it. I really do care. So again, thank you for joining me today, and I'll soon, there's one of the pieces, this way, right here. I can't wait to show you some of the new things I've incorporated into my art room that have just made it not as messy. I'm a very messy artist, so this kind of just made the initial look when you walk in the room nicer. Not quite done yet, but I'll get there. So thank you again for joining me, and I appreciate it, and I love you. Take care.